I think belief takes a while to build, and I just felt we gained a bit of confidence, and as long as we could keep building on that confidence, because I thought we were a little bit static in the first half, and if you're static, they can come at you, and we took a few chances, pulled the trigger on a few passes that either front door or out the back started to work for us, and they started to get a little bit destabilised defensively, but we were scrambling, and I was really proud of the scramble D, because a couple of times it looked like they'd got away and we scrambled back.
Tony Harper, what the bloody hell did we just witness? The Wallabies falling just short, 31 points to 28. The All Blacks hanging on, and the Bledisloe Cup is theirs once again. I'm Christy, Doran. Tony Harper, what did you just make of what we've seen tonight?
It was a bit of a mirror flip on 2 weeks ago, wasn't it, when we saw a very interesting stuff from the Wallabies in Santa Fe, conceded 50-7 in the second half. And look, it was a game of two halves for a second match running. I don't know really what you make of that. I made of it that I'll let you in a little secret. At 21-0 after less than 20 minutes, I fired up a story for the Raw website, which headline was, "What is the record winning margin and record score for the All Blacks in tests against the Wallabies?" And I pushed it live for all those people who were sitting at home Googling that very fact at that time. But it didn't really need to play out that way in the end, did it?
So the extraordinary thing is that the Wallabies conceded 64 points in the last 50 minutes against Argentina, and when they were trailing 28-14 early in the first half, midway through that first half, it was a point a minute. It was almost 100 points in 100 minutes, and you thought, "Oh my goodness, what is going on?" But the All Blacks, the only points that they scored in the second half, Damian McKenzie, the boot of Damian McKenzie, who's really at the total focal point of this match, the highs and the lows. It's extraordinary to think that 4 tries inside 24 minutes and then not another try for the best part of 60 minutes, and just that lone penalty in the 44th minute before the Wallabies came storming back through Hunter Paisami and Tom Wright. And it was set up for this extraordinary cliffhanger at the end before Paisami gets held up in a bit of a choke tackle, and Carl Dixon awards a free kick and a scrum feed to the All Blacks to effectively end the match.
So that's it. We're all done for the pod. I think you've covered off the entire game perfectly. It's succinctly there. No, look, my favourite moment would have been Mike Cron, who is one of the driest characters in rugby, I think, at half time, and he was saying, "We've just got to get bloody harder on D and a bit quicker into position, and we've got to get in their face a lot more." And he was just, there were a few bloodies in that. Like, it was just a bloody shock, wasn't it? They were running from all ends. Our guys were slipping over. And like, the other thing I think that we really need to keep in context here is they probably could or should have scored another 40 points the way they were going. I reckon there was a point at 21-0 and Rieko Ioane threw just a stupid speculative pass out wide. And like, I just felt at times, and D-Mac in the second half, a nice little flick that got caught in his right hand. I felt the All Blacks were just playing with this insane arrogance at a point that it was like, it was just too easy. They'd seen Australia concede, as you said, that mountain of points a week earlier. They'd managed to put up 28 of their own within 25 minutes. And they were just like Harlem Globetrotter rugby, and I think that might have bitten them a bit there.
I completely agree with that. It was like a Barbarians match, and I know that I think it was Jonathan Drenner that might have mentioned it early in the second half. But Ian Payton was sitting just a couple across from me, and he was talking about people wanting to neck themselves almost. Like, that's how bad it was halfway through that first half. But you're right. I think there was arrogance that was shown and displayed. There was, I think, 7 blown tries across that match, and a few of them from flick passes from McKenzie, the forward pass that was later overturned that Tanai caught his Ratama on an incredible length of the field try. We saw the little bobble from Sever Reece into Cody Taylor ahead of the Geordie Barrett disallowed try. So it could have very much been 35 points to 14 at halftime. In the end, it was only a 14-point deficit there. It's crazy to think that they had 81% of territory in that first half, and yet we're talking about a match that was just a 3-point margin.
I want to, because you were there, you've just mentioned you were in the press box there. Pretty big occasion, 70,000 fans at Accor or Stadium Australia or Olympic Stadium, and as part of my research into that, I noticed that the biggest losing margin happened at that ground, and the biggest score conceded happened at that ground as well, and we were on way. But what was it? Give us some kind of insight into what it was like there, the build-up. You know, you and I were together in Brisbane before the match against South Africa, and the streets were full of green shirts, and we felt like we were in an away test. But what was it like actually being there, afternoon Bledisloe, 70,000 people before moving on too far?
Oh, it was a great atmosphere, and it kind of reminded me of the Stade de France, and in the sense that it's just such a big precinct. And Sam Worthington from Wide World of Sports, he walked around the stadium with me, and there was Wallabies left, right and centre. You had Max Jorgensen and others posing for photos. There were shirts being handed out. We saw a couple of the former greats like Nonu and Drew Mitchell out and about too. So there was a real lively atmosphere, as you can imagine, when it's 24 degrees, the sun is shining, the crowd. It was here early, and it looks like there was more than 68,000. I thought it was probably, it looks like there could have been 73,000. But it was a state of shock after 15 minutes. People thought, okay, this might be bad, but I don't think they thought it was going to be so bad so early. So to be thinking about the comeback, it's just a roller coaster of emotions that really has left Australia, was it a step forward or was it a step back? Because in many ways, the All Blacks probably should have still won by 5 or 6 tries, but yet we're talking about a game that was only a 3-point deficit.
I think you've got to look at positives, don't you? And there is a lot on our website tonight in the comment section, a lot of criticism actually of the All Blacks and saying, well, look, the All Blacks are not a very good team and they still beat us. But I think the positives leaning into just how good that comeback was, and a lot of it's come off the bench, hasn't it? A lot of it is power off the bench, and the way really impressed with Langy Gleeson, who's a player who burst onto the scene, young age, a lot of hype about him, and then kind of fizzled out. Well, not fizzled out, but kind of fell away a bit, as young players tend to do, going through a bit of a roller coaster as careers start. And for mine, that was his best performance. He came on and really was impactful off that bench, as slotted into a back row that was, Harry Wilson is another one. I kind of look at Harry Wilson, and we've been through captaincy debates and where's Joe going with this? He's given it to Liam Wright. He's handed it to Allen for a few tests. He's gone with Harry Wilson out of the blue for some of us. Looks like he could be a Wallaby captain for some time. He had game high tackles with 22 tonight. He did a team high number of carries, I think with 16, but he's game managing as well. And for mine, his players seem to be jumping in behind him as well and following his lead. I'd be keen on your impression of, his leadership for a start too.
I agree. Well, I think to start with, the fact that they've managed to claw their way from behind and be in the fight to have a chance to go the length of the field to win a match, that talks about and speaks about the character. I think the entire back row was outstanding. And Fraser McWright was just elite in that first half particularly, but he was busy, he was across the ground. And to have the core of the Reds players there, I was surprised that Tate McDermott came on so late. I think it was in around the 61st, 62nd minute. I would have had him on 10 minutes earlier. And we saw the little bubble from Nick White at the base of the scrum. I thought it was right there and then that he was going to get pulled. But McDermott just brought a spark, didn't he? And Payne Raposa had that line break. We saw they really had their tails up, and Valentini but Wilson's ball carrying. We've seen it for years and years. He always have that engine to keep going. But he broke the line on a couple of occasions. He lost his feet on one moment where it looks like he was going to pop the ball up to see the Wallabies score. As it turned out, it almost ended with the All Blacks going the length of the field before that Ratimer disallowed try. So
also in defence. I mean, he was part of that crew that held up Artie Severe, and that's not an easy thing to do from that far out. That number 8, you're backing him to score 100 out of 100 there. But Wilson was under there, Nick White and Noah, and just that desperation was fantastic to see. Whereas 2 weeks earlier, they just kind of stood aside and let them run through at will.
Yeah, and even 2 tests ago when the Wallabies won by a point in La Plata, it was Harry Wilson forcing that knock on, wasn't it, over the try line that prevented a try. And I agree. I think he could be the Wallabies skipper for a little while. We know that Alan Alatal probably didn't because they were starting with Taniela Tupou. Interestingly, I think it was 45 minutes he went through today. Angus Bell got through 50 minutes. But, the presence, Lucan, you spoke about the power game beforehand. Lucan Salakai-Loto, his charging run, he stampeded over the top of Damien McKenzie, that got the crowd up and going as well. And that's what you want, an injection of power from the bench. And they displayed that, the breakdown turnover from Langy Gleeson, and when it looked like the All Blacks were finally going to break the Wallabies defence in that second half. So there were many moments to be pleased about in that second 40. It was interesting, Sam Bruce from ESPN, he asked Joe Schmidt, are you a half glass full, half glass empty out of that? And I can't quite remember, but I'll paraphrase it. And Schmidt said, there wasn't much water there right the way through, to be honest. But I don't know if he entirely got what he wanted to say out of that. But it was one of those ones where when you're going through the footage of this and on the review, you're going to know that we probably should have lost by a lot more. But he'll be very pleased with the courage, the fact that the Wallabies looks like they gave up in Argentina 2 weeks ago in that last 10 minutes. It was the complete contrast tonight, and that's why the 78 or the 68,000 that leave Sydney tonight will go home thinking, what a game, and they will likely return the next time the Wallabies host a test in Sydney, which is against the Lions in 10 months' time.
You're right, it was a weird game, but it was an exciting game the way it turned out. But it also, for me, highlights the great flaw of the Bledisloe Cup, which is, what are we doing with two match series? Like, why are we doing this? What sport? Imagine the State of Origin going, no, we're just going to do it as 2 games, and Queensland can retain it every season. What about a tennis final? Let's play 4 sets, and if it's 2-2, let's just walk off and give it to the guy who won at the previous meeting between the two. It's an absolute joke. Like, we played 2 games against Wales, and we played against Georgia this season. Like, you can't tell me that we couldn't have found a 3rd game against New Zealand every bloody season. This is something big. Like, why are we so, like, why are we turning our back on the thing that would make this so much more exciting? Like, educate me on this one.
A couple of things on that. It's a good point you make, because interestingly, it was a decision that was made a couple of years ago that the Wallabies thought that maybe a better chance was to win over 2 matches. And they decided to go away from 3 because more often than not it was over after 2 test matches. But it was funny because Joe Schmidt was asked about that this afternoon, and he said, look, when I was with the All Blacks, we loved it. We thought, done and dusted after a test. And now as Wallabies coach, he very much indicated that he was disappointed at the fact that they're not going to, you're not going to Wellington with the cup still alive. Look, we know that
not only that
time, that's going to change though. For the when the Anzac test becomes part of the annual fixtures, you're going to see 3 test matches a year. Now, whether or not the All Blacks decide to put the Bledisloe Cup up for grabs right there and then, we'll see. But it might be the only chance that the Wallabies ever get it back. But you're right; it should be a best of 3 at the moment, I think.
Apparently, they're all flying on the same plane back to Wellington tomorrow, which is another staggering thing. The probably seat 1A will host this massive Bledisloe Cup, and the Aussies are going to have to file on second on the plane and walk past it and not be allowed to touch it and see it, and they can't. Like the fact that it's all done and dusted, and we after a game like that with another game to come, it strikes me as a very rugby way to, draw all the drama out of it. And you're right, like there's going to be an Anzac Test, and there'll be 2 later ones possibly in a rugby championship. But rugby, you have greater faith in than I do that rugby's going to find a way to turn this into something exciting. They'll drain all the possible excitement out of it and hand it over for the first game only. There you go. Anyway, rant done. A really enjoyable game, I thought, in the end. Plenty to watch and plenty to see, and plenty of signs of life. Like Joe was saying, that it takes time to build confidence. By the end, do you reckon they were building confidence?
Well, yes, but haven't we been down this road before? The many false dawns of Australian rugby, they give you a fair bit of hope. That it's almost like a golfer who comes back after one great shot or one great hole, and you go, how good's this game? And it's like the Wallabies, where they give you enough just to keep coming back, but it's tough being a Wallaby supporter. So you feel for everyone that has left tonight, and just thinking it's going to be 23 years now with the Bledisloe being with the All Blacks. So, look, I think Noah Lolosio, he's almost summing up where the game and where the Wallabies are at the moment, because there was a couple of shockers. Early on, if you want to think about how to start a game, you don't want to look at the Wallabies opening 2 minutes where they get taken into touch from the opening kickoff into an Lolosio drop ball inside his 22 to Tom Wright not finding touch, and then the All Blacks scoring just moments later through Will Jordan. So the All Blacks made the perfect start. The Wallabies didn't. I think in the end, Lolosio did make up some ground. He started taking the ball to the line, but that 10 jersey is going to be just another position, talking point, going forward into this Wellington test.
Like, what can he do to quieten that as well? It needs to be about putting together a series of wins, doesn't it, really? And it's hard to see, that the way they're performing as a team, where that comes from. Collectively, I don't think there were too many really shocking performances tonight, but I thought collectively in that opening period they were poor. But Nick Frost probably wasn't at his best for mine, and we saw that when Lucan came on and really stepped it up. Hunter Paisami and Len Ikitau, there was the mix-up in midfield early on that led to a try. They seem to improve that combination a bit later on as well. But did you see anyone who really stood out as having a stinker?
Oh, look, I don't think Marika Korobetti is the player that he was.
No,
and that might be because he was in Japan for a few years. It might just be because he's getting on. Who knows? But he still looks like an international player in the sense that he hits hard, the physicality that he provides. But the error rate is high for the moment. So whether or not we see that change as the international season gets deeper, but he's definitely, like Dylan Peach had an eye-catching cameo, I think, and he's a guy that I think a lot of people would like to see more of at the moment. He probably deserves an opportunity too. There's not too many options Joe Schmidt can go to in the number 10 jersey for the moment, I don't think. So I would expect Lolosio to start, and the fact that they actually opened up the All Blacks a fair bit with the ball that they did have. I thought both sides' defence was pretty average, and including the All Blacks, they got opened up, sliced open several times. It wasn't nearly as bad as what the Wallabies served up inside the opening 20 minutes. But for an international side like the ABs, their standards would be much higher at the moment. And yes, Razor Robinson says that it was a gritty win, that he's proud of the defensive effort, the clutch moments towards the end when Wallace Atichi gets on the ball. But this is a side that aura just had another notch taken off that belt, because All Black sides in the past don't allow a team to come back in like what we just saw.
No, and you've got to think that they've got a number 10 problem as well, like based on what you saw. D-Mac made some excellent breaks. He's a really powerful runner with the ball, but some of his passing, and again, whether we spoke about that right at the top. Some of those pushing the passes and just not quite executing, maybe with a little bit of arrogance in that execution, just not being secure enough. Marika, after Will Jordan's try in 92 seconds, Australia, the first time they really ran it left, and some good play through the hands got to him, and he just dropped it, didn't he? And it was like, oh, here we go again. I'm attuned with you on that one. He just seems to, like, he is our one overseas guy. He comes in. Surely there are options in that. That's one position where I think we are quite stacked, and there are options there. I thought Tom Wright was very good with the ball. He ran 131 metres off 13 carries. Will Jordan was the next highest in the game with 87 metres, but he missed the final tackle for Jordan's first try. He and Angus Bell missed the tackle. Caleb Clark, I mean, that guy is a unit. Talk about runaway freight trains. But, Wright was there but couldn't do anything about it. Noah missed the tackle on Geordie Barrett that probably should have cost them 7 points near the end there. But I just kind of feel that defensively is something that they aren't there with yet. No matter if they are having a decent game with the ball in hand, they are just missing too many in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. I did ask Joe Schmidt about the defensive system and are they happy with where they are at the moment, because it does look way too easy and there's too much space. And it's interesting because a lot of the other international sides, England, South Africa, New Zealand, generally speaking, employ this rush-up defensive line where they try to they try to make the attacker either beat them on the outside with a long cut-out pass or kick in behind. But the Wallabies at the moment taking a couple of steps forward and then they're trying to be solid with the defensive line, but there's space everywhere and it seems like they're passive and they're allowing the opposition to take the space. So I imagine Laurie Fisher will be and Joe Schmidt will be deep in discussions around how to solve that at the moment. Maybe it's a continuity perspective, maybe when they have more trust in that system, they'll figure it out. But at the time being, it does look like it's being brutally exposed. So we'll see. Wellington next week, generally speaking, the conditions aren't nearly what we're going to have today in Sydney. So will the All Blacks have as much space? Will they be as confident running the ball out from their own end and playing with the same freedom? We'll see. But you do fear for what could happen next week. And maybe that will be a better indicator of where this Wallaby side is at, despite the fact that it was a 3-point, really gallant, great, courageous comeback. I still do think that the All Blacks should have put the Wallabies to the sword tonight. They didn't. Nonetheless, an incredible game.
Well said, and I can't wait to read what came out of the Joe Schmidt press conference tonight. Also, interesting that the Raw tonight was represented by four of its operatives at the game. Yourself, Steve Lenthal on the blog. He did the blog live from the game. Jeff Parks, whose rap will be out on Monday, and the great Harry Jones made an appearance. He threatened to ask Razor 5 questions and Joe 5 questions in a press conference. Can you reveal to the Raw audience how many questions H. Jones came up with?
Well, he didn't get one in for Razor. Razor was in and out in 10 minutes, and he kind of decided to end his presser in typical Razor Robinson fashion. But a cheeky question to Harry Wilson just around the tackle with that he made. I think he actually thought it was 25 tackles, but we always say slightly different representations from the stats providers to begin with before the second retakes, but he got a follow-up one in there. But good to see the big bear H. Jones in town and the man with the best travel budget going around. So you're right, good representation from the Raw. Looking forward to having Matt Tamua as always on Monday for a pod on Tuesday, but so much to dissect out of that, and you almost need to have a breather and rewatch the game because, blimey, there was a lot in there to pick apart. Harps, thanks for joining me on this Saturday evening. I'm sure you've got some Saturday night plans, so I'm going to let you get off to it, but look forward to doing it all again in a couple of days' time. Until then, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, I know you've name-checked about 10 journos that you were sitting beside, so I assume you've got to go and buy them all a drink right now.
Well, Pato and Wertho are still sitting about 10 metres to my right, and they decided to give a bit of a clap cheer off because I'm sure they're thrilled that I'm stopped talking, and I need another coffee after a few too many beers last night watching the AFL. So, enough of that. We'll do it next time. Thanks.